It's really exciting to be back here. I'm really honored to have been invited, and I've been just taking a little walk around campus and walking down memory lane a little bit because it's been 10 years since I was here, and I just have a lot of love for this place and for a lot of the people who are still associated with it when I was here. So I'm hoping that this talk will, if possible, be relevant to you in some way, that you're not just sitting there, hoping for cake and really waiting for me to get done. So I'm hoping maybe we could do a show of hands. How many of you guys are actually archaeology or anthropology majors? All right. See, this is my crowd. This is my kind of room. And how many of you decided to study anthropology or archaeological studies because you thought that it would be the fast track to fame and fortune? Success. All right. I like that. Usually it would be like computer programmers. So why is it that you actually decided to study anthropology or archaeological studies? Does somebody actually want to share? How's it going to bring you fame and fortune?
Rigorous publication.
All right. Yeah, popular YouTube series. Yeah, I see it. Okay. I know that I did it because of the love. I did it because I love anthropology. I love reading anthropology. I just think that it's the best discipline. I might be a little bit biased, but I'm not sorry about it. I think anthropology is the best possible way of understanding the world and our place in it. Because it's really the study of humanity, right? The way that we relate to the world around us. I think that there's nothing more fundamental, there's nothing more practical than that. But how many of you have been asked at some point when you announced that you were going to be anthropology or archaeological studies majors, what are you going to do with that? Or how are you going to make a living doing that? Can I actually get a show of hands? How many people have actually been asked? Yeah. Dr. Hersker. I know. I think that for whatever reason, there's a real devaluation of anthropology and the possible contributions it can make to the world, and especially in this country for whatever reason. So you see articles in Forbes, Kiplinger, suggesting that anthropology is one of the least practical majors that are out there. And I think that they're making this claim based on an analysis of the number of job postings where someone is explicitly saying, seeking trained anthropologist. And really, you don't see a lot of those postings out there. And I heard that some of you have career plans to be in CRM, you want to go into field tech or working in a museum. And I think that in those cases, someone might actually advertise, anthropologist wanted. But in many cases, it's true that there's not a lot of job postings that are specifically seeking an anthropologist. But something that you've probably also been reassured about is that anthropology provides a lot of transferable skills. So sometimes people don't necessarily know that they're looking for an anthropologist, and they don't necessarily specifically advertise for one, but nevertheless, I think that anthropologists could do an exceedingly good job in a lot of these fields. And I'm currently somebody who doesn't have the job title of anthropologist, but I would argue that I'm still working as an anthropologist, and of course I'm still living in the world as an anthropologist. So I graduated from SUNY Potsdam in 2007, and it was a really great experience for me because the faculty gave me so many opportunities and so much individualized attention and mentoring. And I think in a larger university, you just don't get that kind of individualized attention to becoming the best anthropologist you can possibly be. And how many of you guys are presidential scholars? I heard there were maybe at least 3. Yeah, that's awesome. That's like more presidential scholars per capita than any other departments. How many of you guys did internships or are planning to do internships? All right, I want to see all hands raised for that one. So if you haven't done an internship yet, what's holding you back? Internships are one of the best ways to get real-world experience, to make contacts, to start just getting to know what opportunities are out there and what it looks like, and figuring out what you'd like to do, and maybe what you might not want to end up doing. So I encourage all of you guys who didn't raise your hand right there, hopefully if you haven't graduated yet, get some internships under your belt. And reflecting back on my time at SUNY Potsdam, I think that the best preparation that it gave me for my future career as an anthropologist and now a stealth anthropologist were those internships, those programs that allowed me to do research, present at conferences. Oh, that's the other thing. How many of you guys have attended or presented at conferences? All right, yeah, that's what I want to see. That's a good number because you guys are gaining real professional experience. You're building your CVs. That's incredible, and I think that SUNY Potsdam gives you a lot more space to succeed and to grow in that sense. And I would say too that my classes at SUNY Potsdam also opened my eyes to a lot of the complexities of cultural appropriation, for example, and entrenched power dynamics in a post-colonial world. That's when I really started thinking along those lines. So, for example, when you see a Victoria's Secret show, and they're walking down the catwalk with Native American headdresses on, for example, how do you interpret that? What might be problematic about that? You see so many cases in daily life, in popular culture, where anthropology classes really gave me a framework for understanding all of the possible power dynamics going on there. So why might it be problematic, for example, what I investigated in my future research, when you've got well-intentioned, young, privileged people from the US that are serving abroad in development programs where they don't necessarily speak the local language or understand the local context. So I owe all of that foundation of knowledge to the classes that I had here at SUNY Potsdam. So I want to give a bit of a shout out to the professors that are still here, many of whom gave me classes and really started me along this path. Can we actually get another round? So after graduating from SUNY Potsdam, I went directly to grad school at the University of Connecticut because I loved school and I couldn't get enough of it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that course. I think it took me a little bit longer to find my path in grad school because I had so little life experience under my belt. But you can pursue any path and it can theoretically lead to success, Just keep moving forward, keep pursuing your passion, and regardless of the path you take to get to it, you can get to where you want to go. So just like I became an anthropologist because I wanted to travel and I wanted to learn how to weave, I decided to study handicrafts in Guatemala because I wanted to learn to speak Spanish and I wanted to make a huipil. So I spent almost 3 years living in Guatemala, and I have some pictures from my time there, just a bit of a slideshow. And for me, anthropological fieldwork was the most magical time of my life because I was volunteering with a regional women's weaving cooperative in Quetzaltenango, and they host international volunteer tourists from all over the world. And these volunteers were helping the cooperative members to market their products to people like us, people in the US or in Europe. And they were helping them to position their products, telling them what it is that we look for in those kinds of products, or what kind of stories to tell to be appealing to people from their home communities. And I wanted to investigate from the cooperative host's perspective what the tangible and intangible benefits were of hosting these international volunteers. So I found that volunteers have indeed been a really important resource helping the cooperative to market their products. But at the same time, I identified this fundamental tension between the volunteers who constantly wanted to share increasingly detailed and personal information about the cooperative, about the products, and particularly about the personal stories of the women themselves in order to market the products, right? And then the women who found that this was really invasive, and they would resist these efforts to bring the consumers closer into their lives. So my dissertation really focused on this kind of push-pull dynamic of information politics, the ways in which they were trying to share but conceal information about the cooperative at the same time. So when I graduated with my PhD in May of 2015, I didn't have a job lined up, and I was applying for academic jobs and non-academic jobs about equally. And I got to the second or even third interview stage in a few different jobs, and eventually this is the job that stuck. This is the one that I ended up getting. And I say that, I want to be really open with you guys, because sometimes speakers will come in and they'll say that it's really important to have a 10-year plan, you know, that you really always need to have a really clear guiding purpose. And I think that that's great if you can do that. I think that sometimes you can be successful if you just keep moving forward step by step, constantly staying true to your values, what it is that drives you, and you don't necessarily have to have a clear goal in mind. So I have yet to ever have more than a one-year plan, but sometimes you can still make do with that. So I wanted to apply for non-academic jobs as well as academic jobs, because I wanted to have that real and immediate impact on people, right? You know, it's really rewarding when you can immediately see the ways in which your work is benefiting people. So I went through 4 interviews and a fundraising plan, and I ended up becoming, as I mentioned, the new executive director of America Solidaria in the US. So if we could play the YouTube video really quickly. It's kind of self-explanatory, hopefully. We just made this last year.
America Solidaria is an international volunteering organization founded in 2002 in Latin America. We send skilled professional volunteers to serve for a year outside of their home countries with host organizations that work with vulnerable populations. So, for example, we have Chileans and Peruvians serving side by side in a project in Ecuador to help feed children out of dangerous jobs. We believe that no country is too poor to give aid or too wealthy to receive it. That's why in America Solidaria, we send volunteers to serve in the U.S. At the moment, we have 5 volunteers serving here in the United States, working in projects for educational capacity building and economic empowerment. One of those volunteers is Lena Bocanegra, who's serving in the Latin American Youth Center.
At the LAYC. This is a non-profit that is here in Washington. So the LAYC basically is an organization that provides different services for young people. So we have different education programs of arts, media, tutoring. We have like a support and to give them a space of peace so they can be here with their friends, and we provide like different services for them. I decided to be an American Solidaria volunteer because I think it is a very interesting opportunity to share my knowledge in a different country, and I was looking for this kind of opportunity, like to use my profession, to use my knowledge, my experience to help others.
Our projects address poverty as a systemic and cultural phenomenon. Our volunteers become agents of transformation, not only in the projects where they work, but also when they return to their home countries.
My name is Catherine. I'm from Nicaragua, and I went to Colombia to serve as an America Solidaria volunteer in an organization called Anthropology. Becoming an America Solidaria volunteer has been the milestone of my life so far. It has been a very enriching experience. I have exchanged culture, food, life lessons that you have never learned if you are not out of your comfort zone. So it's very encouraging to be here and encourage other people to be volunteers too.
Hi, my name is Nisa Castañeda. I'm an attorney from Mexico. I'm 26 years old, and I'm serving at Ayuda, where I provide legal services to the migrant community.
Lisa's Atlas Corps Fellowship through America Solidaria has been dramatically increased the amount of immigrants we've been able to serve in our programs. Nisa came in at a time when we were really overwhelmed, especially with unaccompanied children fleeing persecution and violence in Central America. And so Nisa was able to really connect with the clients, and we were able to expand services to serve many more children. Without Nisa, we would not have been able to do that. It's very important for us to have fellows and have support from partner organizations and from the community, given the great need right now.
Each year, our projects make a difference in the lives of 33,000 people across the Americas. We invite you to join us in ensuring that all children in the Americas have what they need to thrive.
Based nonprofit that mobilizes young people to share their skills on a multilateral basis. And one of the things that I love about America Solidaria is that I think it's a quintessentially Latin American organization. So in schools in South America, they're taught that this is one continent. And I think that that really shapes this vision of an America's region that's based in solidarity. You know, whereas I think that we're taught to think of North America as separate from South America. And I really appreciated as an anthropologist that this wasn't another organization that's falling into that same kind of neo-colonial pattern where we send young people from the US to serve abroad, positioning the US as the only country that's the source of knowledge and skilled, talented young people. I really liked the fact that yes, people from the US are welcome to apply and serve, but we're also recognizing that we have something that we could benefit as well from learning from people from Latin America. So they've invited the US to join them as one of their neighbors in the region, but we don't have any kind of special status because it was founded out of Chile and it's been growing upwards. And it currently has 7 offices, and the next one that's slated to be open this year is America Solidaria, Mexico. So another of the characteristics that drew me to this organization is that it's incorporated some key anthropological principles into its core values. So for example, we mobilize fellows across international borders in part because we realize that poverty is maintained through the systematic devaluation and marginalization of other people, a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding. And our organization emphasizes our interdependence in the ways in which we're all linked in a close web of economic, political, and social ties. We need each other, we depend on each other, and we need to value each other and empathize with each other. So the program is designed to give fellows a sustained experience working alongside people from other places. And I met a fellow from Peru who told me that Peruvians have a lot of stereotypes about Chileans and a lot of resentment. And he served for a year alongside a Chilean woman in Colombia. And ever since then, I think he served probably 4 years ago, but he's taken it upon himself to be this kind of agent of transformation. Every time Peruvians start saying bad things about Chileans, he'll intervene. He'll be that person who says, I'm not going to let you do that in front of me. So obviously this is something that we could use a little bit more of in the US, this kind of empathy with our neighbors in Latin America. So for me, anthropology has been really crucial in developing the kinds of soft skills that I need in my position. I didn't necessarily learn specific technical skills, but I learned how to read, write, analyze, and speak. And these are skills that are surprisingly uncommon, I would say, surprisingly undervalued, and they're skills that you can develop through anthropology. So in my job, I assess the background and training of people from different educational systems. And I would say that, unlike the Latin American system, our US educational system is not always geared specifically towards specific career preparation. But I think that that's okay because there are a lot of jobs that aren't necessarily looking for specific technical skills. And to be honest, whatever skills you learn would probably be obsolete anyway. By the time you get onto the job market, they'd probably just end up retraining you anyway. So something that's been surprising me as I transition out of academia into nonprofit leadership is actually how similar it is. The pace is a little bit different. The rhythms of life are a little bit different. You know, you don't have the luxury of waiting 3 weeks to reply to an email anymore. But you're still a consumer and producer of knowledge. And anthropological insights are also really valuable in running an organization. Because the first thing you do is you approach from an outsider perspective, right? You're trying to gain a sense of the history, trying to get a sense of the major values, what's driving the organization. And organizations also have a theoretical framework that's built into how they work. So, for example, if you're trying to overcome poverty, You have to figure out, how do you define what poverty is? How do you measure it? How do you figure out when you've overcome it or not? And that's really operationalizing a variable. How many of you guys learned how to operationalize variables? Do you guys still do theory and methods classes? Yeah, okay. You guys don't want to admit it, but I see some nods. So yeah, I'm still operationalizing variables. It's just we phrase it a little bit differently outside of the social science world. But that's a skill that I started developing here at SUNY Potsdam that's been serving me in my career. So just to wrap up, I would say anthropology has taken me places that I never would have imagined. And you know how sometimes in your life you just almost are taken out of what you're doing at the moment and think to yourself, how did I get here? What has brought me to this place right now? And the answer is almost always anthropology. So for example, once when I was working with the Weaving Cooperative in Guatemala, I came down with mal de ojo, which is not the evil eye, but somewhat similar. I essentially had conjunctivitis, and they cured me by rubbing a raw egg over my body, and then they cracked it into a bowl of water, and the amount that the egg yolk, the amount that the white spreads is the strength of the mal de ojo that's been placed on you. So they did it, and they said, ooh, that's a bad one. and I did get better from my pink eye, so, maybe it worked. It wasn't always necessarily fun and games. There was a moment when the cooperative was extorted for money by one of the more famous local gangs. They threatened to kill us if we didn't give them a certain number of quetzales by a certain point. And it was really serious. I was frightened for myself and for my coworkers. And there was a division of opinion within the cooperative as well as to how to handle this crisis. And I ended up aligning myself with the vice president who wanted to go to the police and supporting her and trying to help the cooperative get through this moment. But I just found myself in a police station in Guatemala thinking to myself, how did I get here? Not necessarily in that awestruck way. And more recently, I ate cow heart in Lima with coworkers from Chile, Peru, Argentina, Uruguay, and Colombia. And more recently, I was telling Morgan, I had the experience of being in New York City at a Chilean-sponsored business event, and I got the chance to meet famous Latin American author Isabel Allende. And I was much more excited to meet her than she was to meet me. She kind of looked me up and down, but, I also had that kind of moment where I thought, anthropology is taking me to meet my heroes. So I would say that anthropology can be the ticket to an amazing life. And obviously my life isn't over yet, but I'm 10 years out of SUNY Potsdam, and I would say it's taken me to some amazing places so far. And I think it's also fundamental for creating a better world, the kind of world that we want to live in. We need you to live and work as anthropologists, whether anthropologist is your official job title or whether you're an undercover anthropologist like I am. Especially today. We have so much work to do to make this the kind of world where differences of opinion, differences of background, religion, ethnicity can coexist peacefully. I'm constantly hearing opinions that are based on assumptions about what kinds of gender behaviors, what kinds of family structures are natural. I hear assumptions about the effect that migrants or refugees have on host communities. And policies and programs are based on these assumptions. So we need social scientists. We need people who can be a voice, telling people what they've seen, telling people about the tremendous diversity of human practice and belief and behavior. Somebody needs to be a voice in public policy, in Washington, D.C., where I live, telling people that there are many different ways of living and that they can all be valid and they can all be accepted. So if I had to come out with a cheesy takeaway from today's speech, it would be, go be anthropologists, whether it's your job title or not. You're our only hope. Thanks.